One of the hardest parts of healing isn't changing your behavior. It's that for a while, you may feel a little lost, a little detached, confused. I know because I've experienced myself and I have clients describe it the same exact way. The truth is that it's actually a very normal part of healing, or maybe a better way to say it is a normal part of coming home to yourself. Because for years, you knew exactly who you were: the responsible one, the helper, strong one, the peacemaker, the one who held everything together. Then you begin setting boundaries. You stop rescuing everyone and you begin saying no. And suddenly, you don't quite recognize yourself anymore. We often confuse adaptation with identity. We don't just say, I tend to help people. We say, I'm a helper. We don't say, sometimes I avoid conflict. We say, I'm just the peacemaker. The behavior slowly becomes the identity. And after enough years, we stop questioning it altogether and it just becomes who we are. We just believe it. I've watched this happen over and over again. Someone starts setting healthy boundaries for the first time. They stop rescuing everyone. They begin saying no. They stop carrying responsibility that doesn't belong to them anymore. And something unexpected happens. They don't just feel uncomfortable, they begin feeling strange. They begin questioning themselves. They begin wondering if they're becoming selfish or saying things like, this just doesn't feel like me. I don't even know who I am anymore. Not because the boundary was wrong, but because they've spent so many years believing that taking care of everyone else was simply who they were. But here's what I think is really happening. As children, we don't just learn behaviors. We begin learning who we believe we need to become. Maybe becoming responsible helped create stability. Maybe becoming the strong one kept your emotions protected. Maybe becoming the peacemaker reduced conflict, and that made you feel safe. Maybe becoming independent kept disappointment at a distance. None of these possibilities are facts. Every person's story is different, but here's what they all have in common. At one point, those roles made sense. They helped us navigate the world we were living in. They helped keep us connected. The problem is, many of us carried those same roles into adulthood without ever asking, do they still serve me? Healing isn't about creating a better version of yourself. I believe it's the journey home to your authentic self. And maybe that's harder than it sounds. Because from the moment we were born, we begin receiving messages about who we should be. Be a good girl. Be strong. Don't cry. Don't disappoint people. Give grandma a hug. Make sure you're successful. Work harder. Get good grades. And over time, those messages became expectations. And those expectations became roles. And eventually, those roles became linked to our identity. So when we begin to let those patterns and those roles go, it can feel confusing. Not because we're losing ourselves, but because we're finally questioning everything we've been taught about who we're supposed to be. Healing isn't about creating a new identity. It's about remembering the person who existed before all those expectations were layered on top of you. It's about developing allegiance to yourself instead of the roles you've been living from. Being compassionate is different than believing you must rescue everyone. And being responsible is different than believing it's your responsibility to be the responsible one. Being independent is different than believing you can never ask for help. And being kind is different than abandoning yourself to keep the peace and everyone else comfortable. The role isn't who you are. The role is who you learned you need to be to stay safe. And what is learned can be questioned. It can be updated. It can be released. Not because you're becoming someone new, but because you're remembering who you were all along. Instead of asking, what's wrong with me? or what's wrong with them. I started asking, what role have I been playing? And that one question has really changed everything because it replaced judgment with curiosity that feels much more human and much more compassionate. Because I don't believe healing is about becoming someone better. It's about remembering who you were before fear and expectations and survival convinced you that you had to become someone else. And maybe that's why healing feels so uncomfortable. Because for a while, it can feel like you're losing yourself. Your ego doesn't like to lose the roles it's comfortable with. And it thinks you're letting go of a version of yourself. It's basically like a death. You're letting go of a piece of you that used to be, and that feels terrible. But underneath all of that is the person that you've been all along. Not perfect, not finished, but authentic. Healing is about finally giving yourself permission to be who you were created to be, because you're not broken. You're patterned. And patterns, they can be changed.